Am I required to tell you everything about my past?
To what extent does that thing that you haven't shared or talked about having an impact on your relationship, whether you think so or not? So I think that becomes the sort of this differentiating factor.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I don't feel like I should tell you everything about my past, but I feel like if it's a past that's affecting the present, I should share that.
One of the things that would keep someone from sharing would be a bit of shame around it or the feeling that you might disapprove, right?
True.
So, like, how do you actually develop that trust that you can be fully open with each other around traumas, also knowing that your partner is going to really be able to be supportive of you and not use that as a weapon? Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Interracial Couple Podcast.
Where it's not all black and white. My name is Cera, I'm black.
I'm Matthew, I'm white. And this week we are diving into the question of how much to share and what is withholding and what is not sharing. Sort of a communication conversation.
Yeah.
But also definitions, right? And I think as we move on in our relationships, one of the things is that certain understandings, it's almost as though vocabulary needs to evolve and shift,
True. So, am I required to tell you everything about my past?
About your past. So we're going to start there.
Yeah.
Required?
Yeah. Am I obliged?
Well, I think an obligation and a requirement, there's a similarity there. Well, I think this is the kind of the framing of it was, at what point do you feel like you're withholding something? Like, if you feel like maybe I should tell them, that's probably a good question to ask. And if you feel like that, maybe. But I think one of the other things is, to what extent does that thing that you haven't shared or talked about, to what extent is that having an impact on your relationship, whether you think so or not?
Okay, so the way I see it is that I don't feel like, for couples, not necessarily us, but I don't feel like you're required to share everything about your past with your partner.
Right. And I think that's right. So there are definitely things from well, I'll also go from me. There are definitely things in my past. I'm like, actually, I don't know. I'm really bad at that. I'm like an open book.
You are an open book. And also you don't remember a lot. So.
And I don't remember a lot, which makes it easy. If I've forgotten it, then I'm not withholding anything. And if I remember, then I share it. But I think the thing is if there's something that will impact how I am in a relationship. And that's a hard one because a lot of times I don't think we recognize the extent to which certain events have had an impact on our lives and which don't. And if I can give this one example, when I was younger, I remember my very first kiss. I was 10 years old. And
wow, you started young.
I did. Well, you know what? I mean, I was smooth even back then. Actually, I wasn't. I was so not smooth. It's not even funny. First of all, I don't think there's a 10-year-old boy who is smooth. But I was mortified. And
your first kiss?
Yeah, I thought that I was going to go to hell.
Mm.
And
you were still going to go to hell.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the verdict is not yet in.
You thought you were going to hell? Has that changed?
Where I'm going to go when I die?
Yeah.
I think I'll probably get a little bit of both. I think I'm going to be one of those people that gets a little bit of both. You get a little heaven, a little hell.
Okay.
But I think one of the reasons why that was important and why I even shared that story with you is that this sort of like Puritan shame thing around my sexuality, around being attracted to someone, around the way my body reacted and the way I felt when this girl put her tongue in my mouth and I was like, oh my God, no, don't do that. I'm going to die. I'm going to go to hell. That tells you something about me. But then again, like a party in high school where I hooked up, like who cares, right? Because that doesn't impact me. So I didn't not tell you about a high school hookup, right?
Yeah.
I'm not like withholding anything. I just didn't share. It's I don't think about it. It has no impact on me. So I think that becomes the sort of this differentiating factor.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I don't feel like I should tell you everything about my past, but I feel like if it's a past that's affecting the present, then I think I should share that.
If I go back and I think of like what really could be impacting my relationship, I think sometimes it can be hard to say. It's like, oh, I'm pushing this down, I want to forget it. It could be, and that could be something that's specifically relationship related or even just how you're things that happen in your childhood with your parents. We all have traumas in different ways or another. So I think if it's a trauma from your past, that means it's playing a role in your relationship. And so if you're not sharing that, then there's actually something that is going to be in your relationship. And I think you pointed this out too. One of the things when we first got together was we actually had to have this agreement that when we share something from our past, that can't be something that the other partner brings up in the relationship as like ammunition. And I think we both had that in the past. And so therefore, to be really clear about that, like how do you actually develop that trust that you can be fully open with each other around traumas, also knowing that your partner is going to really be able to be supportive of you and not use that as a weapon.
Yeah, I think that's really important in building trust, because I know in some relationship, or in my relationships in the past, where I had said something to a partner and then there was next time we were having a fight, they would use it to win the argument, and it just was like, then I really can't tell you anything.
Right.
So I think that was really important for a relationship to have that agreement. And so I feel like, oh, I can tell you anything about my past. But sometimes I feel like we're just talking and something is like, oh, I did this in the past. And then I realized, oh, actually, I never got to tell you that. Like, or even today, like where you were like, oh, when I was 17, I made out. I went to this party and I made out. And I was like, yeah, I guess, yeah, it's not important.
It never came up because it was not important.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, it was like...
And when it comes out, it's not like I was withholding it. It just didn't come out,
Yeah.
you know, so...
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that becomes, there's kind of that difference between withholding and sharing. What might be an example, though, of withholding and not sharing in your mind?
Withholding and not sharing. Like in this case of the past?
Yeah, or in general even. I guess we can kind of say, yeah, is there something... Well, I guess that's a good thing, right? Because there's the past,
Yeah.
and then there's the present. So what would be an example, I guess probably from the present within our relationship, of withholding as opposed to not sharing?
Like 2 weeks ago, I went to the supermarket to get food, and this guy was hitting on me. You know, like as fast, I was just driving and he was just like, I smiled at him and he like waved back and we started almost like, yeah. Anyway,
We almost started like, yeah, what? We almost started like, yeah. So what exactly? Give me more.
Nothing happened.
Because you were in your car.
I was in my car, he was in his car. But definitely there was that thing of like, are you single, you know?
Shall I follow you into the parking lot and get your number?
Correct. And then I was like, I don't have a ring, so I couldn't do that. But it was kind of...
That was a not so subtle dig, but keep going.
Can't show them that. But the thing about it was like, I didn't need to tell you that. You know, but I came home and I told you that.
Yeah.
Oh, I had like, there was like this cute guy like who was hitting on me today.
And I think that, well, that's like kind of a fun story. Like if someone's hitting on me, I might want to share that mostly because I'm like, hey, like, I'm kind of like, you're not the only one who thinks I'm good looking. like, there's more than a vote of one, you know? Like,
but I feel like I didn't have to tell you that either.
Right. Yes. And I don't think I would have felt like you were withholding anything if you hadn't shared that with me.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. I was like, what would be an example of withholding as opposed to not sharing?
Let me think. If I made an expensive purchase that I thought you were not going to approve in like the present, in our present relationship, I think I may, if I didn't tell you and I felt uncomfortable about making that purchase, I think that's withholding.
Right. And so, but now of course, when you say that, it actually brings up an interesting conundrum for me. And one of those things is that, let's say there's something that's important to you, but you haven't like really figured out how to like have that conversation, or every time you bring it up, your partner reacts instead of you being able to actually have a constructive dialogue. So let's say you went out and we have an agreement, pretty much any expenditure over $100 needs to be discussed. That's kind of like generally the rule. So I think there's a couple of things in that. One is if I make a purchase for $120 and I don't tell you, then yeah, then you're withholding something. But it also could be like, am I going to react? Are we going to get into a fight where is it something that you knew was important and you don't feel like I have your back around you understanding that that was an important purchase? for some reason or another. If we go with like the example of your desk, granted I was there, but we had pretty much generally come up with a price that we thought we were going to spend on your desk, and then at the end of the day, you ended up spending, what, about $100 more, right? And so you talked about that as a challenge because that desk you ended up getting was something that became important to you. And had you done it without me there, that could have been a difficult conversation, even though we knew you were getting a desk, but you had to change your plans a little bit, and it was totally acceptable. But I think that's one of the things where it's like, where there's almost like, I don't want to say a gray area, but an exposing of an issue that's not necessarily the person who's not sharing, but also the receiver, the person listening, who would have to say, am I playing into this person's inability to share with me?
Yeah, but I think you bring up an important thing. It's like we have an agreement that anything that's above $100, we need to talk about. So it doesn't matter if it's 101, if it's 102. It doesn't matter that it's $2 more. I think once it's more, I feel because there's that agreement, you are breaking the agreement if you're not sharing.
Yeah, but then to me, there's this other thing. While I agree with you 100%, that would be almost like spotlighting the fact that we have some issue or some challenge within our relationship that those $2 is a problem that it wasn't brought up, Like, not that you should absolutely, that's our agreement, but when something like that comes up, it is spotlighting something to me. No?
No, I feel like what it's bringing up is just keeping the agreements. Like, it shouldn't be a big deal for me to just say something. If we made an agreement, I feel like it's harder for the person who has broken the agreement to say something. Then the problem in the relationship is actually not so much the agreement. It's like, what is the reason that you feel a hard time bringing that up?
Right, and that's great, because I think that leads into this other question, which is that if it's something that one person might feel is totally okay, but another person doesn't, and this is something I think that comes up in relationships quite a bit, is the question of masturbation, right? Generally, not always, but generally, men masturbate more than women, from what I hear and what people talk about, and even my open conversations and talking with men in different working situations or whatever. So that being the case, I think there's also a social stigma around that,
Yeah.
And like if I masturbate, do I need to say something? Do I not? Is that my private thing because it's just kind of my body? What is, you don't necessarily tell me, no, you do tell me every time you're on your period. I know it's impossible not to know, but like it's something that's kind of like biological. It's not like you have to reveal to me that you're having a period. But yet at the same time, if either of us were to masturbate, it's almost a sense of, do I need to say something?
I don't have the same thing. Like, if I masturbate, I masturbate. Like, yeah. I don't have to tell you. And I don't feel like when you masturbate, like, there's the need to tell me.
But does it not feel like it's almost like, it's not cheating at all, but there's almost a sense of just like, I don't know. And I think some of it could be me. Like, I know that I carry like shame around it. Unfortunately, for better or for mostly worse, I'm impacted by an old Puritan, like American stream of, morality and right and wrong or whatever. But orgasm is something that is a part of our relationship. So if I do it outside of our relationship,
it's interesting because I feel like part of it could be like, okay, you could just say casually, oh, today I masturbated when you were not home. And I also feel like it's one of those things like you could leave out. To me, that's the nuance. Mm-hmm. Is that if it's going to affect our sex life, then definitely you should share.
Like, by the way, I'm probably not going to be that into having sex tonight because I whacked off in the middle of the day.
Correct.
And then you'd be like, oh, okay.
Okay. Or it's like sometimes men I know can get to be like addicted to porn, and so they are masturbating a lot. Then that is actually impacting the relationship. Then that becomes like, that is a must.
Well, of course, but that's a big thing because an addiction, what does that mean? You do it every day, and it's something you do every day that's not a positive habit. Maybe an example of an addiction, if you drink every day and you know that it's not something you're proud of, then maybe you have a drinking problem. If you watch porn every day. But I mean, that also kind of moves into a different conversation around porn and porn addiction. That's another whole
I think
thing.
I just wanted to like make it clear that that's not probably that's not exact like what we're
right,
talking
because
about.
that's a very different thing. Now I have an issue, right? But even around that, whether it's even within sort of our conversations, I have a much bigger issue with porn and masturbation with like a negative association than you do. Like you're just like, have at it, everybody. If it makes you, if it's fun for you, do it.
Yeah, I think like I would support ethical porn. I don't know what that exactly means, but I don't have an issue with people watching porn.
Yeah, and
or my partner watching porn for that.
Yeah.
For that matter. But I think, do I need to feel like I need to tell you, or when I masturbate, or you need to tell me when you masturbate? I don't feel like you need to tell me. I need to tell you.
If it's an issue, and I think one of the things that would keep someone from sharing would be a bit of shame around it, or the feeling that you might disapprove, right?
True.
So if you would disapprove that I masturbated, or this sort of like, ha ha ha, like boys, whatever, you do your thing. If it's going to be something that's weird, why should I even bring it up? Just let it be, because it's not going to impact our relationship.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes where that gray area can come is it impacting in any way, or is it just, whatever?
Yeah.
Of course, in my case, it's something I rarely get around to, so it's kind of like, if I went golfing, I would tell you I went golfing because I golf so rarely. You'd be like, what'd you do? And I'd be like, I went golfing. And I masturbate pretty rarely. So it'd be like, guess what I did today? I went golfing. I masturbated.
But the other thing about masturbation is like, I want to hear the details. So don't withhold.
That's very sweet.